Gene, let's talk about all the things going on right now. We've got low unemployment. We've got a Federal Reserve that's still talking about hiking interest rates. We're still wrestling with inflation. And we've got this debt ceiling thing coming up upon us that has to be dealt with.
I mean, look, there is no question that this is a critical time. And what you're seeing in these budget discussions is really a tale of two different values, both about what you would do with your budget and both also about your basic responsibility to the economic confidence and economic management in this country. So you have the Republicans, what you called chaos caucus. I'll let that be your quote. But let's look at what's happened here. One, they start out with their Republican study group, 170 members, who say they're going to cut Social Security benefits by raising the retirement age to 70. They're going to cut Medicare. They're going to go after Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. And then once those plans get a little unpopular, they say, well, we're going to balance the budget without touching any of those. And then people say, well, that would lead to 85% cuts in all the rest of government. And then they jump around today and they say, well, maybe we would go along with this if you cut all domestic investments by 25%, which is an understatement, really, because that's just really talking about the first year. If you look, they're saying we're going to cut $3 trillion. Now, I've been involved in a lot of budgets, so let's talk about what that would mean. That would mean, are you going to cut the number one program in discretionary spending, which is veterans medical care? Are you going to cut that by 25%? Are you going to cut border security? Are you going to cut law enforcement? Are you going to cut pre-K? And here's the thing. You can say, no, I'm not going to cut that thing. But that means if you're not going to cut veterans Medicare, then you're going to cut the Coast Guard and border security that much deeper. You can't escape. So first of all, this has just been a reckless show that we've seen so far. Secondly, we're seeing constantly this notion that this is not just let's lay out our values between two different sides and have a public discussion. That's something the president keeps inviting. He's put out a detailed budget. He's asking them to put out a detailed budget.
That's how the process should work.
No, we're going. Right. That's exactly how it should work. What nobody should do, and let me be clear, and you can have me come back on your show a decade from now, I'll say the same thing. No one, whether you're Democrat or Republican, conservative or progressive, should hold hostage the basic financial confidence of our country. Nobody should say, you give me what I want on the budget, even if you agreed with it, no less things that might threaten Social Security or education or veterans care. Nobody should say, you do what I want on the budget, or I'm going to default for the first time in the history of our country and risk a global recession, a deep recession that we have been happily coming out of with strength and job growth. And Ali, I know that in the rest of the show, you're going to talk some about Silicon Valley Bank. And as you know, I'm going to defer to our Secretary of Treasury and Fed and regulators on that. But at a moment where we're discussing the financial certainty, the importance of confidence in our economy and our financial sector, what that means, think about the fact that at the same time, there is the people who are controlling the House of Representatives are saying, we would default the economy for this first time in our history. We would not pay our bills. Yeah. I mean, there is no financial crisis that could possibly ever in the history of our country compare to what that would do.
Well, you and I were talking the last time this was a threat, so it's entirely likely we'll be talking about this in a decade from now. But, you know, one of the things that you and an administration would enjoy celebrating is job growth, low unemployment. I understand that we may have, to some people, problematically low unemployment, but guys like me like the fact that people have jobs and have some wage power. How do you square this one? Because you've got a Fed that wants to deal with inflation, and there's a really important reason why we need to. But in that conversation between Elizabeth Warren and Jerome Powell, Powell says, these are the only tools we have. And he's not wrong about that. So what do you do? Because if you raise inflation, if you raise interest rates by another 100 basis points, another percentage point, unemployment goes up by another percentage point.
Well, we have a policy in the White House that we, do not really comment or criticize on the Federal Reserve. But let me put it this way. I think that we believe that we are very well positioned, better positioned than almost any country, to make the transition from what was an extraordinary period of red hot, almost unprecedented job growth to a more steady state of solid job growth that, that puts our economy on a strong but stable path as we see prices go down. If you look at the last 3 months, and let me be clear to anybody watching, inflation is too high. It's global inflation, and U.S. inflation is really just middle of the pack. But still, I know that's not much comfort to somebody going through a grocery line or a gas line. But if you look at the last 3 months, what you've seen is inflation come down over the last 3 months to about 3.4%, and wages are up about 3.6%. And I don't mean to confuse everyone with numbers, but the main point is, on average, people are getting real wage growth. That's what you'd like to see. You'd like to see people see inflation come down while we keep our economy going strong. And I think everybody has to have a little bit of humility about saying, oh, well, you can only come into a soft landing in one way based on, recent history. I mean, let's be honest. We have no historical example of what's happened, right? That we haven't had a pandemic since 103 years ago, and we didn't shut down the economy then. So I believe that we can get back and have that strength. But I'll say one last thing. When we had even the threat of debt limit in 2011, consumer confidence dropped 22%. Just the threat. So if we want to keep this economy going, one thing we can do is not have another self-inflicted wound by scaring the country that we're going to now have a potential default on top of the challenges that we can't control, like an unprecedented land war in Europe.